Thanks for joining us today. This is the 131st of these Wednesday afternoon poetry readings. This particular reading today is curated by Jessica Grimm, and it's called Compressive Lines. And Jessica has invited Melanie Neilson, Brian Kim Stefans, Makalani Bandele, and Laura Moriarty to read with her, and we're super looking forward to this. This is also the 792nd issue or germ spot of the neo-sociality atmosphere, which the Rail has been engaged with since sometime in 2020, when it decided that we all needed to spend more time with each other online. And the Rail's gotten a lot of mileage out of poetry, which is great. We don't mind that. Somewhere out there, Feng Bui, the publisher of the Rail, is thinking about how much more money to give to all the poets. And I will introduce our readers, and in just a minute, if you're here for the first time, you might like to take a look at the chat during the reading, as there will be information about the Brooklyn Rail, and also more particularly information about the readers and their various endeavors that'll be posted, links to their works and to things they've got going on as they're getting ready to read and reading. My name's Anselm Berrigan. I'm the poetry editor for the Rail, and also work on putting this series together with Carolyn, Chloe, and Eleanor, the terrific geniuses behind this operation. I just get out in front and say a few dumb things to get the reading going, and well, not that dumb actually. But since we do it every week, I do have to think of something different to say each time, and usually it's something embarrassing. Anyway, our first reader is going to be Laura Moriarty. Laura was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, grew up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and Northern California, where she's lived since 1964. She was the director of the American Poetry Archives at the Poetry Center at SF State for many years. She's taught at Naropa University and Mills College, and was deputy director of small press distribution for a couple decades. Her recent books include Personal Volcano, Who That Divines, A Tonalist, and A Semblance, selected in New Poems 1975 to 2007. Last February, she had her first show of visual art, Wrapped Glass, at Right Window in San Francisco. Her Witch Walks is forthcoming from Nightboat. Please welcome Laura Moriarty to the Rail reading series.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to read from Witch Walks today, and Witch Walks spelled that way. It's a combination of prose and poetry, more poetry, broken line, or as I think of them, just broken line pieces. And I'm going to start. I'm going to start with the prologue, or just a couple paragraphs from the prologue. I should say that the work is basically in relation to walking and aging, and a visual practice which I started during the pandemic, and which really took me by surprise, and continues to take me by surprise, I'm pleased to say. Prologue. An old woman wanders the pestilential streets. She sees herself from the outside. She feels like an archaeologist of the present. She makes finds. At first, she is afraid to pick up the items in case they are covered in viruses. Eventually, she lets go of that idea, and many objects appear on her work table. Some are arranged into boxes. She finds herself to be obsessed with metal, glass, game pieces, marbles, tools, jewelry, and figurines, and with assembling. An inveterate Blakean, She rereads the four Zoas as well as his Laocoon's assertion that practice is art. If you leave off, you are lost. This motto of her youth continues to work in her old age. Her witchiness is not a choice, but how she is seen by others. It is a strong, if vexed position from which to work and see. Being old makes her aware of the nearness of death. She realizes she has begun a project and a practice that will take years to complete. She continues to begin. Another prose piece. Inevitably, she falls. She has always fallen, just as people she has known have sometimes died, but not as often as now. One can fall at any time, tricked by gravel or uneven ground. People are at risk when they walk, some more than others. They can be felled by other people or by cops. It's just luck to get old or fate to be healthy enough to walk, an accident, an aporia. This is not pretended doubt, but the real thing. She has always been in love with doubt. There is a constant unmaking of self in writing or in making art. She wonders about old choices. Should she choose them again? The circumstances beyond her control are the usual ones. There are dangers, but being old gives her the time to think and make. Dues paid, walk away. Quote, we all get to a fuck it point of life, a moment worthy of celebration. Dolores Durantes, translated by Facebook. Witch Walk 29, upside down. Which as I is this pronoun which profiles a thing in atemporal relation to another thing or one, and as such reduces the deixis assumed by the self to be its due while reflecting out like a shield or mirror and in like an eye that sees in reverse those other selves, including those with her, me as again withered, but semantically active as are articulated lives, cumulative threats, convey a dangerous but celebratory demonstration of things made of still more things, fastened with wire and string as part of the being in question, me but not me, contrives her way through the grid of the poem and the mist of morning, while people and opportunities self-create, with some dancing because they can, while others cling to situations and people kept close because the political is familiar and discourse is thick with what is hidden, meaning what the look, see, place hears, individual sounds resounding into not quite songs as real as what goes on when you see me here or I you with our mind's heart, not forgetting doubts which further surround what we know to be the source of the sorcerer, whose spells melt in our hungry mouths as the sun in the sea, the moon anywhere. Witch Walk 39, robe chant imagining for Nick Robinson. The robe is closed, open each which way, allowing what flows to be the same as going and sowing, knowing in advance to wake each day again without expectations, great, small, or otherwise played out, like a field, garden, or feeling, from which floating forward fast from minding or not, wrapped in the visible cloak of invisible thought, wrought into waking up and out and saying while staying still, finding what saves everything and one everywhere for all the time left while busy living, dying, trying to sit still, quietly expressed as being the same vest dressed in breath, present while walking, sitting, lying down, rising up. Witch Walk 40, follow the work, quote, very slowly and take each step of the way, Stanley Whitney, whose apparent trajectory when lines appear as facts, stacked in the foreground and back when loose but determined actions suggest what space squared gets drawn into gesture, a step away as the exact color persists us into existence, which meant as events interrogation is the act of moving across the world of the square where freedom's hallucinated limits spilling over an imaginary edge maintain a sure-handed, bespoke approach, tone, sounded out like what is present where, quote, I could put color next to color and not lose the air. Witchwalk 41, the air, through which it's hard to fly these days, finds me spread instead across the page, wanting by making marks to go, but also stay, to walk groundedly, upright, finding what can't not be a place or state of mind whose invented version of the day extends outward into the obvious traps, mapped maze of ideas masquerading as luck or love, soaring above the vicissitudes noted by everyone to matter more than whatever else does. And finally, epilogue. The old woman tries to shed her ancient selves, but like the jackets and scarves tied around her waist as she walks, they adhere. She runs hot and is often semi-clothed when her friends are swathed in sweaters. Back in the day, she was unafraid of being naked at art events, nude beaches, and other places where it was required. She is still that way, drawing herself, tits out, window shades demurely drawn. Spying a flock of goldfinches, the woman incorporates them into her project, but she forgets to fly, occupy space, make the way. When she remembers, is remembered, she takes off. Stars appear, a grid, a stand of palms, a crossroads, a shortcut down stone steps. The wind comes up, whirling around like the map in her head. When a storm disarranges the neighborhood, she goes out into it, is probably there now, remembering her lines. Common knowledge, time of day, the stars are always correct. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was fabulous. Melanie Neilson's books include Civil Noir from Roof Books, Natural Facts from Poets and Poets, and several chapbooks. Her poems are included in over 20 anthologies, most recently in Rage Baking, The Transformative Power of Flower, Fury, and Women's Voices by Kathy Gunst and Catherine Alford from Simon & Schuster. She continues to collaborate on writing projects with Jessica Grimm. Originally from San Diego, she lives in New York City. Please welcome Melanie Neilson.
Hello, everybody. How's this? Can you hear me well? Thank you, Anselm, Jessica, and the fabulous Brooklyn Rail team for having me today. Thank you to the fellow readers. I'm so pleased to be in your company. About my set, I will read a quixotic, very quick cross-section of work, probably pretty quickly. And let's see, so it'll be mostly chronological. We start in the late 1980s, okay? This is, I was writing a lot of concrete poetry in a concrete library, futurist, brutalist architecture in San Diego. And a lot of the work at that time was concrete. And so what I started doing recently is transcribing, because these were pictures. And so this is just one. It's a bird seemed to be calling her. The bird was a satellite. You never know. She doesn't believe the weather. She always doubts the weather. A nuance is expected in the mountains. Light activity expected tonight and early tomorrow. Afternoon in the LA Times. The central stroller lost her monkey. Sunday afternoon on the island. Mewing satellites shoot at clouds. Data captured 14 times every 24 hours. A bird seemed to be calling her, The bird was a satellite. Incognito exploded alphabetically. And so does a catfish begin to appear. because there was no element of submission in my voice, no scenario interest in flowers, except as a dodge to jolly. Discontinued style, a two-bar, dark field, beveled velvet, flared arms, slacks off, curio suspension, roiling biceps available in almond. Furnishing sharp sights in darkness, entertainment, touch and go, past the solitaire. Digitally reversible into eternity, bibliotherapy, bioessay. Fluctuant, accident, prone, plots worth of pianos, every grand, every professional upright, every player, every digital, every concealed hood, every previously owned waterfall seat, every inner spring and contemporary shadow, absolutely cine, angio, cardiographic, hero blasted. Grisly thumbprint goes on telling fortunes never exactly alike about a client to the grave, never exactly alike, the lines in the ball of the thumb. A future apparatus, no disguise, the dearest blood. How to repeat the same old disappointed remark, I trust past statistics, aloud, the cost of funerals, all the dislocated way on. Kaleidoscopically fed back, black and blue, licorice, and lucky enough to hand note. That is, lie eternity, prone between the brains. Maintaining a reasonably unbroken flow, both sides grew dainty. Not obligate, but roll arms, break mania together. One night, it was towards the close of the war. Presently, panoramic, a long glance. Quark part of the city, repeatedly the whole. Anonymous disaster. Variations on a theme, different mood maybe. Out of the un-American blue, the skies, they were ashes in prison. Authorities, worthless and lonesome. The authorities mumble Friday and sober. In the night, the ridiculous size of one room. In the night, going to work in the olfactory, some kind of apology, like, excuse me? Dressed to the nines and going to work in a poem. But whom survives the gloom? The confused car driver of a car? No 7 people alike, spend and fight. Swerve, grab, hit a van, survive. Quoted without saying a thing. Nighttime kinks the road. Cross center line, technology and imagination. Heads on, listless in limbo. Says who? Be my no one on the street? I opened my mouth when I started talking about my car. I started the car and found the afterworld limping. To fight the bad vibrations, I listened to the song I could never do up to 100 times a day, the car said. I guess I should have kept my mouth shut when I started to brag about my car. I found myself midway alive in the bog, big box, lookout, cultivating yes. Said driver in the rain, chatter domain, thick, this dark makes freeway, synthetic, honeywood. The key. If I go over time, just raise your hand. I'm a little off my timing. The key. Bar Better Days, now closed. In another borough, far, far away, sublet, up, in no particular coat. We fray everywhere, walking. So sure, a wash was. So I know much, too late, buried night and day are one. And then I don't know. Why? My blind heart goes east on West 49th Street. Almost funerary, family relief, a postpartum haiku. In the time before, pregnant Sims can no longer brawl. Near death, I saw the life. I'm going to read a tiny play. It's very tiny. Convulsive beauty in the fur teacup bar. An artist, detective, and French poet go into a bar. Disembodied voiceover. Bartender. Is it easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism? Artist. Yes, I synchronize politics and space with my private third eye 24/7. Detective. Space, I was born to name you, to drive my Ford Galaxy into the sunset on a green wind. Artist. So let the shutdown of fossil fuels begin, and like a pump that draws water from the actual river, this love story will stretch across time and space. Paul Eluard, French poet. There is another world, and it is in this one. One drop of water, dreaming very quietly. Is that my time? That was enough. That was the set, right? The time.
You could read another one or two if you want.
Oh, really? Oh,
Go now.
huh?
Do another one.
Oh, baby. I mean, great. Co-cameo, as in Edgar. At the grave, revisited. Tilt to lightning rod man as lantern dance. Like poet, like suspect, invents a grasp plot. Sun shock exposed and content past midnight. Case of mortal selves, dance to strange songs. Here, come here, and see a rack sail full and dark. Dazzling until skies pour, imagining a tribe of moths. Thanks for remembering my reading Poe to you in disguise. The feather door floats over underworld mud shine. Do it light, it's late, enjoy the machinery. Good grief, still emitting pulses in plain sights of national imagining. Hammer the tulip tree, music tome of Poe. Hammer the tulip tree, music tome, Poe. Calm blooms, see some circular sentence humming, soft granite monstrous dews of ham and bottle. Attention caught, bent, wise, hurled to the future. One more tiny one. Okay. This is from a poem for our family pet who just passed away recently. A cat named Caesar, who was 19. And this is for my two kids, Marshall and Roman. The title is Felis Deo with clarity of backwards. Caesar speculates, daytime moat drama, festive iced pane night, handy like a text, pause at January. Story of one day takes an eternity. Can open, purrs good side of city. From time to time, she will give information. Tonight she continues, silent, motionless. Baggage check, no. The bird song of origin. Curiosity's pajamas. Along backwards, Caesar dreams Eiffel firehouse. Grinning, wholly impromptu. Jawbone kiss, line by line, magnitude, nips, pure Orchidean. Quest, returned suns. Time trees continuum. Valentine, whisper, exact, yellow zinnia. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Melanie. I'm sorry about Caesar.
Thank you.
Now we will get to hear Makalani Bandele read. Makalani is an Affrilachian poet, received fellowships from the Cave Canem Foundation and NEA, Kentucky Arts Council, and other places. His work's been published in several anthologies and widely online and in print literary journals, including the Washington Square Review, Prairie Schooner, and 32 Poems, to name a few. Mark is also the author of the books Hellfightin from Willow Books and Under the Aegis of a Winged Mind, awarded the 2019 Autumn House Press Poetry Prize. And his latest manuscript is going to be published by Futurepoem in 2024, having won the 2022 Other Futures Award. And it has the amazing title, Jopappy, and the sentence makers are eponymous as funk. Please welcome Makalani to the Rail reading series.
Thank you to Brooklyn Rail, Carolyn, Chloe, Anselm, to all of you all who are in attendance. It's just such a great honor and pleasure to share with you. This has been the last few days, last week or two. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. This has been a really hard time with a lot of the gun violence being so prescient, and it just weighs heavy on me. And a lot of times when I do readings, I like to start with kind of a song to clear my voice. A lot of times I do old like work songs or field hollers. So I'm just gonna do a little short one, really clear the space and invite some of the ancestors in. Ain't got long, oh mama. Ain't got long, oh, I ain't got long. Ain't got long at the murder's home. Pray for me, yeah. Oh, mama. Pray for me, yeah. Pray for me. Lord, I got a long holdover. I can't go free. I was telling some of the other poets earlier when we were gathering that I'm going to try something different. Anyone that's familiar with my poetry, or if you'll read any of my books or go online, you'll see that like I'm a lyric poet to the heart. I hate narrative, but I was just recently in a writing workshop and a writing retreat rather, and they of course always encourage you to try something new, write out of, don't write out of your comfort zone, or within your comfort zone, to write out of it. So this is something narrative that I'm experimenting with that I wrote during that writing workshop. It's titled "No Way Out But In," a self-interrogation on caregiving and brain chemistry over and against the film Madeline's Madeline. Abstract. When a sudden stroke pushes a son with his rich interior world and troubled history with his mother into a situation where he has to care for her. When a theater workshop's ambitious director pushes a teenager to weave her rich interior world and troubled history with her mother into their collective art, the ties between parent and child are strained, and the lines between the performative and reality of the situation begin to blur. Let's do an improv based
I assume he's frozen for everybody, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot, I don't know. I don't know what to do.
There, makalani is. One moment.
Okay, cool.
I
Try
cut out
coming
again.
And there you go. Yeah, you're back.
I'm sorry.
Welcome back.
All
That
right.
was scary. That was a freeze.
Okay. So let's see. I don't even know where you lost me at.
I think it was something
Did
like,
you-
let's try an improvisation, or let's try
Okay.
something.
Okay, so you got the abstract, right? You got the abstract, the juxtaposition of my situation against this movie,
Yes.
Madeline's Madeline, about this girl who's in a theater troupe, and she has. Anyway, I'll go on. So let's do an improv based on the theme No Way Out. Evangeline, director of the theater troupe Madeline belongs to. Several actors begin to move around the stage, breathing rhythmically. Unreliable narrator. Stroke rewires the brain, the delicacy with which you must treat some people whose brains are wired differently. Madeline is a cat with great paws at the beginning of the movie, purring and coughing up an imaginary fur ball, climbing on the credenza and crouching. Her mom strokes her and pets her. One strange way the stroke has changed my mom's brain is that when she feels like crying, she laughs. In fact, she laughs all the time now, while she finds less and less funny, unable to use her arm and leg on her right side. Putting on her shoes in the afternoon is not the end of the story. More akin to the climax of the drama of getting her ready for the day. There are physical, communication, emotional, and behavioral changes that come from strokes, according to the National Institute of Health. My mother would never admit she's depressed, but she is, sitting in her rickety wheelchair in front of the TV. It's the way she holds her head to the side, resting in her good hand, that suggests to me she is bored and lonely, a lot like me most of the time. The delicacy with which you must treat some people whose brains are wired differently. The need for some kind of art therapy, like drama or creative writing. You have to stimulate your mind to keep it going. Jamal, a formerly incarcerated person who Evangeline brought to the theater group to talk about living in isolation and in an enclosed space. I sincerely meant in the afternoon when I said it earlier. Most days, my mom doesn't wake up until 2 p.m., but that's not what she tells my cousins and aunts and the few friends that call. She doesn't receive many calls. Hardly anybody ever stops by to visit her, not her pastor or deacon, not a single soul from the church she was dedicated to for 65 years. Seems funny to give them a soul behind such callousness. Do you get a sense yet of how tedious it is to get her ready in the morning? All this, and we haven't even got her sitting on the side of the bed yet, which is accomplished by a maneuver her one-time occupational therapist taught me, where I grab the left side of her leg just above the knee and swing her legs off the bed while my left arm is on her left shoulder and her left arm locks across it. The vigorous pull with the swing sits my mom up on the side of the bed. In a span of 15 seconds, she'll say, "Mercy," a half a dozen times. Is it really that bad? I can't call it. Stiff as a poker, she says. If stiffness in old age is not excruciating, it's very discomforting, evidently. What you are experiencing is just a metaphor. The emotions you are having are not your own. They are someone else's unreliable narrator. You are not the cat. You are inside the cat, Evangeline. Once she is sitting up on the side of the bed, I burn some sage to combat the odor of the urine from the pee-soaked diaper and the top layer of the bed pad. Next, I lay out her clothes next to her. I reposition her commode chair and wheelchair at right angles, parallel to the bed, and sit a small trash can near the commode chair and put her toiletry bag on the bed on top of her clothes. Before I go into the bathroom, I give her a special support belt for her to put around her waist so it is easier for me to help her on her feet and keep her steady while we transition from wheelchair to commode chair and back, wheelchair to bed, wheelchair to car, car to wheelchair, bed to commode chair. You get the idea. In the bathroom, I rinse out her dentures in a red cup and put them on her dresser for later. I take her a towel, 2 wash rags, and soap. Then I run her bath water into a plastic tub for soaking your feet normally. And when it's half full, I carry it out and I sit it on the wheelchair. Am I a good son? Was she a good mother? See how I put it in the past tense? Is it because roles have reversed? I'm helping her with her diaper and pulling her pants up after she goes to the bathroom, and she needs me to drive her to the neurologist and advocate for her care. With her wash tub and the wheelchair, everything is in place for her bath, and I can transition her from the bed to the commode chair. Once in the chair, I leave, go in the kitchen, and crank up the coffee maker for her daily cup of coffee. I have anywhere from 40 to 75 minutes before she calls me back to get her ultimately situated for the day. This is just a metaphor, Evangeline. She calls me to come, and she is on the commode chair, clothed from the waist up. I pour out the water, hang up the towel and wash rag. Next, I help her get a diaper and her pants on and stand her up so we can pull them up and then transition her to the wheelchair. 17 some odd mercies have been enjoined in the process. The news on TV breaks through with a special report. Donald Trump is calling for the military to put down the Black Lives Matter protests. I restation the commode chair to just outside the bathroom and spin my mom in her wheelchair around so she can see what the woman is saying about the orange man she loves to hate. She watches and listens intently while I put on her shoes. Though my mom detests Trump, she doesn't sound all that different from him when she goes on about foreigners and is suspicious of low-flow toilets. I've determined it's the boomer value system. Do you feel safe with your mom? Evangeline. When I moved back to 3002 LeMan Drive over 2 years ago, it was like setting foot back in time. I wonder if my mom had been able to afford to remodel the house, even a little, if her kitchen, living room, 1.5 bathrooms, and 3 bedrooms were updated to 21st century decors, would her mind still be back in the second half of the 20th century? Although you must also consider the time warp from the stroke. All guards down. There is an honest but embarrassing part of me that can't wait till she's singing up there. I remember when I was little hearing my mom in church choir singing, "I'll be singing up there. I'll be singing up there. Oh, come on up to bright glory. I'll be singing up there." Contrastly, I'll be singing on this side of the veil. Come and go to that land. Come and go to that land. Come and go to that land where I'm bound. I have a mother in that land. Ironically, I probably won't be referring to her, but the mother who gave me up for adoption when I was a baby. I have a mother in that land. I have a mother in that land where I'm bound. Am I a good son? Really now, can I be a good poet if I'm a bad son and storyteller? I suspect it depends on who's asking. I'm gonna tell my Lord Daniel, I'm gonna tell my Lord Daniel, how you do me here, Daniel, how you do me here, Daniel. Living on borrowed land, Daniel, living on borrowed land, Daniel, live on borrowed land, Daniel, live on borrowed land. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Makalani. Our next reader is going to be Brian Kim Stefans. Brian's a poet, digital artist, and theorist. His poetry publications include Viva Miscegenation, New Writing, What is Said to the Poet Concerning Flowers, and Free Space Comics. Recent books include a collection of translations, Festivals of Patience, the verse poems of Arthur Rimbaud, and Word Toys, Poetry and Techniques, a series of essays concerning poetry and philosophy. Stefans is a professor in the English department at UCLA. We used to run around New York together in the late 90s, causing trouble. Please welcome Brian Kim Stefans to the Rail Reading Series.
Thank you. Is this microphone working? Nice to see you all, and thank you, Jessica, for thinking of me for this lovely series. I wish I knew about this little chat group. I guess you've done hundreds of like social, well, I forget what the term was, but during the pandemic, and I wasn't invited to a single one, and I was very lonely. Anyway, my new book is 4 Trapped Things, which just got printed recently. It's from Roof. Oh, and by the way, I want to say, Makalani, you're a wonderful storyteller. So if you're worrying about that, I mean, you definitely keep the line. It's still in the poem, but anyway, so this book was largely written during the Trump administration and revised it during the pandemic. There's lots of, I'm not going to give too much of it. And there's a sonnet sequence called A Theatrical Oasis in the Spine of the Moon, which has this refrain concerning the deep state, which is kind of a play on a few different things like, but then there's a long overture to so we cleverly put the overture to the sonnet sequence in the first part of the book because it's a longer poem, so it's not a sonnet, but it does act as an overture to the later thing. So this is called Overture for Affrilachian. In the cool night of a nothing but strangely, hold on, let me start over. In the cool night of a nothing but strangely dramatic universe, some bookie flips through his miniature post-its, deciphering his doodles. 2 women do a spacewalk in her flipped a bird by the president, and Sweden sighs with relief as Greta Thunberg returns. And a Feynman diagram minding its own business collides with a Learjet, and Jesse Norman retires, having avoided the apocalypse. And somewhere over the Seychelles, a CEO needs deodorant, while America abandons the Kurds and ISIS trends on the internet. And a pigeon on a live cam from Bryant Park poops on the shoulder of Gertrude Stein, and the prime minister from Ethiopia buffs his Nobel Prize. And Heath Ledger gives his most inscrutable, most American performance, and a lawyer decamps to jazzicize his psyche with a massage from Jacob Epstein. And pearl-teethed personalities argue that the dandruff on Rudy Giuliani's pate is a fascinating ding on sich as he bromances Ukraine, and a coupon for Chick-fil-A tries to defang the Fourth Estate, and the proverbial bedlamite suffers a heart attack in the Norton anthology. And opioid deaths reach 500,000 in the time Big Pharma takes to resoil their linens, hump a trash bag, move accounts to the islands, and Silicon warriors mend their yurts on a slope in Big Sur, and Johnny Greenwood writes a soundtrack inspired by fracking and unicorns. And China swarms with new gadgets, bionic mandibles and belt fanatics, and Canada sits atop us, cold and tranquil as mint lozenges, and Madagascar luxuriates in baobab leaves, and Ireland gyres for posterity, and North Korea declares plastic surgery a national shame, though its TV serials bleed onto the screens of most of Asia and elsewhere, for instance, Nigeria, and Hungary turns right, like the Philippines, and Brunei takes to stones to publish its deviants, men who love men and women who love women, and endless choirs of sycobordinates struggle to sing in key in our relative parliaments. On this cool night, I have a pork chop, peas, and English muffin for dinner. And here it's Rimbaud's birthday from Jennifer Moxley on Facebook. I don't think the gods are with us. I open my iPhone, loveless. My cats shoot shit out of their damn boxes, but will return to me in bed. So that's the overture. My cats make a lot of appearances in these poems, actually, but and so does kind of crappy food. But anyway, so this is called so there's about 18 of these, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. I'm going to read maybe 7 or something. Theatrical oasis in the spine of the moon or the deep state. For Tim Davis. 1. This is the intelligence plan, defrosting a chicken from Trader Joe's. Yesterday's string beans and weepy arugula. This plan might sound like cooking to the uninitiated. Such a conclusion would be naive. There is a deep state browning the salad leaves, perhaps bacteria, perhaps Schopenhauer's villain. It's the word for will, W-I-L-L-E-N, but it's pronounced villain. It sounds like villain. So let me just say that again. There is a deep state browning the salad leaves, perhaps bacteria, perhaps Schopenhauer's villain. And only my soft mania grants me confidence in my culinary superpowers that this plan might succeed. I've long been abandoned by the chorus of angels. Pegged to me, she's trying to get her shit together. We've all been subtracted to our regular hells. I've just bought a bottle of cheap wine and cigarettes, but the world turns, the deep state thickens, mocking my arugula and my pesto-choked chicken. 2. The cats claw the leather of my newish IKEA sofa. My shouts of stop it don't fall like God's thunder. My air conditioner hums. My only music is something by Alvin Curran from a Santa Cruz experiment. A thin wire slung across the campus, that's how I remember it, granting us a deep state access. The news presses on. There's turmoil in the Capitol. The king might be dethroned, but there's no chance of a cure. Some bureaucrats might retire. Some simply live on with book deals and paternosters ripe with confession. None of them will admit to killing my chicken, oxidizing my string beans for the sake of the Virgin, and will circulate among the Sunday news shows, reeking of piety, the bottle of wine near over, Pega still not talking. 3. I love a tawdry joke, and if I'm fired for one, c'est la vie. So long as it is musical and has some relation to the human. Jokes are jokes, and if they are truly human comedy, the tune jams the populace, though the next day is pedestrian. Richard Pryor was great at this, and so was George Carlin. Lenny Bruce was the martyr, like the Christ crucified, but never in a Mel Gibson flick. He was simply the unwitting agent who led the cavalry. He expired on his kitchen tiles. You saw the photos, a Jew who thought he could beat the government. Now the battle call has been adopted by the president. Half the nation is impotent, another has been conscripted, enduringly indigent, and now posts bounties against the federal. Some illiterate turkey can raise his talents in Kentucky. Give us a few decisions and the states will turn the other way. That was a Mitch McConnell reference, by the way. I wasn't just talking about everybody in Kentucky. I'm sorry, I forgot when I started, but I think I'm just going to read two more of these. This is a silly one. Number 5. New York poets still want to be Frank O'Hara. I want to be Emma Stone. 1 second the blonde vixen, another Picasso neurotic, and 30 seconds saving a film like the execrable La La Land, and elsewhere conjuring a masterclass from the Billie Jean King biopic. We loves you, Emma Stone, though you're not helping me to die slower, to sink into the mattress in a box, to trust in therapy for my Thor, temporarily disenfranchised in a mental trailer. You've got me thumbing the ropes like that elegant fish, Peter Lorre. But back to Gina Rowlands, who was never in a Frank O'Hara movie, since movies have foundered since Will Smith got de-aged by Ang Lee in a flick I passed on, much as I loved Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, with its message from afar that I inflict on my screenplay students. Hey la, New York, time to bathe in the frou-frou on the Wi-Fi, refill the revolutionary slow cooker, and indulge in Paleolithic diets. Let me just read 2 more, okay? And then I'll leave you alone. 9. That's my inner dialogue. I twitch beyond obvious righteousness, the vote for progressives, the vote for the free market, angling like a Watt figure among the wheelchairs and tents, wondering if, outside of justice, I get a 10 for my performance. There are many others I could conjure, though it's raining men when the earth explodes with zingers like dandelions, though we don't have dandelions in LA, or like rains from El Nino that pelt the dust, oh shit, and overrated succulents of Runyon Canyon. Yes, this all sounds pretty cool, a way to Zorro with panache, the zombily unimaginative when they conspire in enmity, the ones addicted to paradise gas, for whom shitting is not entropy, the ones who wake impossibly confirmed in a data czar's employ. Verlaine wrote, fuck rhetoric, in a teacup of perfect rhyme, a dime of quatrains, of comforting heresy, of love beyond time. Oh. And this will be the last one. I certainly don't think the gods are with us, Holderlin. I fancy I'm just a shuffling fetus who Sorry. I certainly don't think the gods are with us, Holderlin. I fancy I'm just a shuffling fetus who bucked the trends, some palpitating jellyfish who took to land, hearing the wages were generous in the world of men. Perhaps I'd merely ascended from a deep sea vent to put on this flesh suit, 2 arms, 2 legs, nipples and a chin, and carry within some memory of the acids that still animate this quizzical, humanish actant. Oh, I would love to have a god within me. I wouldn't be so lonely, shoveling into my gullet microwaved peas, or soaping my genitals, warbling pop tunes decades old, not from eternity, fearing the state inside me, and could fathom how there's no verdict in my credit cards, that man bargains with the gland and is still of earth. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. You were always invited. Our last reader is going to be Jessica Grimm. Jessica is the author of Vexed from Blaze Vox and Ubu Editions, Frey from O Books, Locale from Poets and Poets, and The Inveterate Life also from O Books. With Melanie Neilson, she co-founded and co-edited Big Alice from 1989 to 2000. Excerpts of a long-form collaboration with Neilson, the autobiography of Jean Foos, have appeared in Bomb, Brooklyn Rail, Chicago Review, Conjunctions, and Some. A recent collaboration with Melanie and Jean Fu's Alsop's Tables was published by Ragged Sky. She lives in Ohio. She's the curator also of today's event. Thank you, Jessica, and please welcome her to the Rail Reading Series.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much, Anselm and Carolyn and everybody at the Brooklyn Rail for this pretty great opportunity. Thank you, Laura, Melanie, Makalani, and Brian for truly remarkable listening experience. Yeah, hard to follow all of that, actually. So I'm going to read a combination of things. All of it is fairly recent work. First piece is called After Effect. Dying memes wailing in the dawn of the meme wars. But since they behaved badly while alive, their deaths are marked only as tiny punctures in the atmosphere. West of here, where sun rises later, you could weep for the dark compression of your thoughts. Doubling generative pause in a part of the language not able to coordinate with the writing. Diversion as designation. Deranging effect of animal elocution and its aftermath lets loose flavor from a word. On the sky, the sound of orange. Abandoned magic upholds fun lightness of granite, sponge and its curvature. Not that we as a people intended any of this. Interlochen. Mists over northern wilds form along the outline of my son's frame, then collapse into an empty space with the slight woodsy smell of stage fog. I lived in Myanmar as a Peace Corps volunteer in 2019 and part of 2020. The town I lived in for most of that time was called Molomyai. And the following short pieces are from Molomyai Series 1. Merit. In their forgiven state, flocks soar. Loose ideas riding currents only slightly tied to this or any life. Can you find it in your heart? Where, when done, does the soul even go? The bad luck of so many species. Untitled. An elderly man on my walk last evening hurried to the side of the street as he saw me approaching, pulling down the branches of a small tree to obscure his face in green, that I would not cast eyes further upon him, nor he further upon me. The street I lived on in Molomyai was called Sibindaya. On Sibindaya. Hot light holds tight to the ground. Neighborhood elevation just heaves. Misinterpretations throw down with or without reliable water source. Friendly reminder of mortality, slip on wet concrete while running, eyes on the gates of home. Patan Quarter, hot season in Burma, where's a mind go? Can you help any amount? Pigeon in my house. There's a pigeon in my house. I'm going to throw open the windows, go for a walk, and see if when I return, there's a pigeon in my house. So the following pieces are from a summer pre-pandemic when I did a lot of travel and thinking about travel and thinking about being home. First piece is called Flew, F-L-E-W. And a word in the first line is wend, W-E-N-D. So flew. As a favor, the wend's straight line leans in. Whole years and their melodies pretend. Resin succumbs and repeats. As angles re-seamed, route unspools. We fed the air the metal of our wings. Breathe normally without upsetting lungs. Clusters look like greed floating in green below clouds which also look like greed to disarm the atmosphere. Innsbruck. Space holders culture filled as planned. Confrontational speech turning to text as it occurs, or is that directional? Gold, yellow apparel touring itself around, language grown dusty the closer to the city it got, or more porous, in any case, meanings streaming through. Munich. Thick generations glue and unglue thinking. The plan evolved overnight and is now a different plan. Airspace as understood by birds. Bavarian July brings such stones. To provide relief from trauma, some form of done with reigns. A slice across the nail recalls a prevaricating loam. How I wish I were one, or even more than one. A meme, a seizing. Oberlin. Asymptomatic aroma, dry spell algorithm at work on the plants. My believability, awaiting first light, first call. So to recognize at this reduced distance domain, can we loosen or partially place that idea elsewhere? Variant of peaceable or variant of peaceable. Alacrity endorphins of principled desists, but not the variant we'd anticipated, the long, dry, whatever itself, again, the word, the presentation of the word about time, or less than a word, if possible. No edge to the absence is the problem. And I'll finish with a couple more pieces from Myanmar. Some of this, or this piece appeared in February Brooklyn Rail. It's called Metta. Metta is a Buddhist term for loving kindness. Metta Center was the name of the training site in Bago, Myanmar, where I lived for the first month that I was there. So I'll just read some of these. And so Metta, January, February 2019. 3. In the morning, flat surface chants fall into utterance, then quiet, its preternatural accumulation. Tissue thin end game, empire leans against glass, and in rough fields, oxen in the sun bellow. 4. Grammar props days stretched like dry tongues, anti-malarial misfires, subtropic tendency toward void, drowns out voice. Scrappy trees loose, mustard-colored blooms to parched dirt where they're taken up and skewered on a stick. Resonant syllable collapses on a narrow concrete path, sequence but a strand, weakest of chains holding you to this earth. 5. Shredding noise forms amorphous calcifications in the mind, affording lapses of interest from the outside reviewer. Despite packed details, campers started coming apart at the seams. Baseline consequential, volley arrives, family clutching a retainer nearly detonated, a table carried out to cover bare floor and swept through the room's air on oscillated currents. Chamana me Jessica ba, Chamana me Bama Thanda Timba, depending. And I'll finish with 7. Powdery earth rises from each step into plumes. Wash of detainment, the hours it took not to say, an original quiet, so light it was nearly unhearable. Our confinement to imagine the tone applies without affect to the grammar instance we tell. To feel the country in the lungs, ash and a rote exuberance. Pulls the eye toward the outer frame of any picture. They can surface as refusals, quail eggs in rings on a pole. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jessica. And thank you, Brian and Laura and Makalani and Melanie. And thanks everybody for being here. And we will now throw the mics open, which is another way of saying we will unmute everyone and say hello and goodbye as we head on into the rest of whatever type of time period this is.
Well,
Thank
morning
you
over
so
here.
much. That was beautiful.
you. Bye.
So much.
Thank you very much.
So
Wonderful
brilliant.
sharing with you
Yay,
guys.
wonderful.
Thank you, Melanie.
So brilliant.